I'm here with the great Matt of Cryptopsy to talk about the upcoming brand new record. Feels like you guys just released an album last week, and now there's another one here. An Insatiable Violence out June 20th. This time around on Season of Mist, the debut on Season of Mist. So I'm not part of Season of Mist, but welcome to the team. How's things
Thank
going?
you. Everything's great. We're loving our experience at Season. We wanted to find a home. We wanted to find a lasting relationship for the rest of Cryptopsy's career. We tried to establish that with Nuclear Blast, and we did not see eye to eye. And we are extremely content and happy with our experience so far at Season. The team is amazing. Michael Gordon running things. Will, Sebastian handling PR, Anna, the social team, everyone else on the team just taking such good care of us.
Before we talk about the record, there's a lot to talk about, but before we talk about the record, you guys just finished off a European run. How did that go?
It was great. It was our first tour on, well, we've been with Avocado before, but back with Avocado, which is a great booking agency in Europe, and it was flawlessly executed. Honestly, their organization, the way that everything was put together was great. The lineup was literally incredible. It was Decapitated Cryptopsy, Warbringer, Carnation, like Decapitated Cryptopsy and Warbringer are headliners in their own right. So putting all three of us together on a package really made something special. The UK is where we kicked it off. We kicked it off at Incineration Fest. That was very cool. It's like Maryland Death Fest, but in London with multiple venues and lots of cool bands playing. It was incredible. The UK was really one of the highlights of the tour. Um, just packed shows, a lot of sold out shows in the UK. Mainland Europe was also incredible. Poland was amazing. My favorite thing that I saw, Pedro, is the resurgence of youth in death metal shows. I gotta say, for real, honestly, a few shows like marked us that 50% of the crowd were under 19, younger maybe, like Denmark. Aarhus at Vauxhall in Denmark. I would say 50% of the crowd was 16 to 9-year-old, 19-year-old kids. Just exciting for death metal.
I'm
So
not I'm not surprised that Denmark would have that youth resurgence as far as death metal is concerned because we're seeing the same thing in the bands.
it's cool. Yeah, like Based and other bands like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's so
yeah.
many young bands coming out of Denmark that have that death metal sound, that aggressive sound.
It's really exciting. Another
Really exciting.
Poland too was very young. Young kids waiting for us outside the venue. Like,
By
we
the way,
always appreciate when people wait for us outside the venue, like when the bus shows up. It's always very appreciated, but it tends to be a certain demographic of human that does that, and they tend to be older than me. But it wasn't in Poland. It was young people that were amazing, and they stood like front row and they knew all the words. It was incredible.
I
So
love I love
death
how
metal is back.
I love how politically correct you are about that statement, but
I'm very PR friendly.
that was a good one. You didn't make a joke about our house in the middle of the street.
No, I didn't know. They
Missed
have great beer. They
opportunity.
have great beer in Denmark too. I was sad we weren't in Copenhagen, but my good friend Tim from Tool sent me a whole case of beer from Tool as a present to Cryptopsy at the venue for us. So great beer. We went around. We went to a little micro, which we didn't get to do very much this tour because there's not much craft beer necessarily in. We played a lot of Germany, so Germany is more traditional. But Aarhus, we definitely enjoyed some craft beer that day.
Our house in the middle of the street. So that's the joke that we were going with when we were in Denmark this year. So let's talk about this record. Leading up to this record, you guys won a Juno with a previous album. I know for those outside of Canada, maybe that doesn't mean a lot, but for those of us in Canada, the 51st state, it still means quite a
Not
bit.
yet.
Not yet, yeah. It means quite a bit. So does that influence you guys at all when the time came to go into the studio, considering how successful the previous record was?
No, not necessarily the Juno. The fans' response was more of a pressure, our own pressure. I was literally writing Chris this morning saying if we felt pressure for the last one, get ready for the next one. because that's the pressure after this record, because this one seems to be getting even more acclaim so far. The Juno was cool. We were excited to win it. Obviously, it's a huge honor. We had zero anticipation of winning because in the category with us was a bunch of amazing bands that are all our friends, Voivod, Ken Mode, Danko Jones, Cataclysm. We were honestly anticipating Voivod winning
So was
because,
I.
being from Montreal, Voivod is such a pioneering band. They are the pinnacle of Quebec metal, the precursors. They've always done everything first. They just did the OSM thing, the symphony orchestra thing, which is also like super interesting. They're always thinking outside of the box. So we were expecting Voivod to win because it's always Voivod. We got this when Gojira did the Olympics last year. I was talking to people about how cool it was, and they were like, "Oh, do you ever think that if the Olympics come back to Montreal or Quebec City or something, that Cryptopsy would be asked to perform?" And I said, no, the last Voivod.
I
So
think
we had
that's a
zero
good one.
anticipation of winning. So when we did win, it caught us by a surprise. We were just honored to be nominated. It was cool. I would have never gone to the ceremony because I never expected to win, but I was also on tour. But it was cool. The pressure comes from us, from the legacy of the band, from the fans, more so than a statue.
Does the band at this point in time still have something to prove?
We always have something to prove. Absolutely. Yeah, always. And Chris had the best quote this morning. I was like, oh, we're going to keep that for future PR, but I'm going to steal it. I'm going to say it right now. I just, when I was talking about the pressure for the next one, he said, what did he say? He said, it was amazing. He compared us to Pantera. Not that we're like Pantera. I can't remember. He said like if As Gomorrah was Cowboys to Hell, this one is far beyond driven. The next one has to be our Great Southern Trendkill. So this is what we do. We're always feeling pressure. We always have something to prove. Yes, the band has an amazing legacy, but we're the longest standing lineup at this point. It's going to be almost 20 years. I'm the singer of Cryptopsy. Chris has been in the band for 20 years, but we still always have something to prove because we're just artists and we're never satisfied and we always want to create interesting things that we like. We like to push the envelope. We don't want to recreate a carbon copied version of something that was successful. That was never in Cryptopsy's cards. If you look at None So Vile, the success, the acclaim that it had when it initially came out, they could have just kept making None So Vile, but they didn't. They went and made Whisper Supremacy, which was completely different. So this is where we stand in the legacy of the band, and that's something that we still feel within ourselves as artists that we always have to evolve.
When it comes to making a new record, with that thought in mind of always having to evolve, do you come in with certain boxes that you guys have to check as
We
far
we
as what?
had goals for an insatiable violence. We toured a lot as Gamora Burns. We are touring a lot recently, and we will continue. So we really analyze what works in a live setting, and we are a live band. So we wanted to drag more elements of groove into the new record. So we really, really, really put a lot of emphasis on creating a groovy record. And we thought that we had accomplished that. And then Chris had laid down his guitars, or at least the scratch guitars were done. And then Flo went in and tracked his drums. And every day they were like, oh my God, this is so fucking brutal. This is not groovy. What did we do? And they were sort of disappointed. They were like, well, this is what it's going to be because this is what we wrote. And then when I came in and we laid down the vocals, the groove came back, which was interesting.
Yeah, I felt like this album, it's really a weird thing to say. I think I actually mentioned that on my review. I think this is one of the most sonically accessible records
It's
I've
the
ever.
by far the most digestible Cryptopsy record,
Yeah.
which is something that we strive to do as well. We wanted to create this relationship with a first-time listener where they have something that they can latch onto on the first listen, while still being cryptopsy and extreme and all over the place and brutal and confusing, but there's still little moments that a first-time listener, a first-time death metal exposed person that listens to cryptopsy for the first time on this record would be like, "Oh, I understand that." And then they'll be like, "Oh, what happened? Why don't I understand anymore?" But we let things breathe a bit more. We repeated patterns a little bit longer. We played Blasphemy Made Flesh. We played Blasphemy Made Flesh at MDF last year, and doing that record, there's like patterns that like riffs repeat a long time on that, much more than modern Cryptopsy. So we sort of got influenced by that because we were writing at the same point that as we were putting all that together on Death to All, because we did Death to All and we flew out of Death to All to go do MDF and flew back, and we were writing on that tour. So I think that leaked into our writing mindset. So we wanted to have it be more digestible, have sections that repeat a bit more. We wanted to be more groovy, but we also, a huge thing that was like, we have to put this into this record was we loved the ending of Praise the Filth on As Gomorrah Burns. It's a song that we always wanted to play live, but because Chris recorded it with a Floyd Rose, and he doesn't tour with a Floyd Rose guitar. We never had the opportunity to play it. So we wanted to drag in some of those elements from Praise the Filth, which we really appreciated, which was a darkness, a somberness, a dirtiness, like a hangover feeling, which we drag throughout the record. Not black metal. We don't want to have black metal and death metal. There's enough bands that do that. We want to bring a malaise, an uncomfortableness, something that makes you feel like you got to take a bath.
Yeah, I definitely got that. And it's not just the sound that changed on this record in terms of being more accessible. Your vocal delivery, I felt like it was quite different. Not,
I worked a lot. I worked a lot. The enunciation, the biting into it.
yeah.
Because I recorded the vocals for As Gomorrah in the summer of 2022. So that's a long time ago. So I've had, 150 shows to experiment with my voice. Unlike a guitarist, modern death metal vocalists, deathcore vocalists will say that this is not true. But for myself, as a 40-year-old man, 42-year-old man soon, that has two young kids, that works, that's busy, I don't have time to stand in my room and scream. So I practice on stage. I do practice for tours and stuff to get my voice back into shape, but I'm not like experimenting with my voice the way that a guitarist will noodle on a guitar while watching TV. It's not something that's going to happen. I don't drive, so a lot of people like practice screaming while driving. I don't drive. I take the metro, the subway, I take the bus. I walk around, I bike around. I'm not going to be doing death metal vocals while biking around. So I practice while on stage. So I had a lot more opportunities to explore my lower register. I had a lot more opportunities to practice really biting into the phonetics of what I'm delivering. And Chris and I really, really were very strict on if people can understand what's going on. And I think if you are an avid death metal fan, you can definitely catch the majority of what I'm saying, even without following the lyrics. If you're following the lyrics, you can catch everything, unlike Lord Worm. But but we put a lot of work into it. And then my new highs that I dragged in on this record, I have a new project coming where I'm doing a lot more really high vocals, and that stem from those demo sessions where I've been just dragging out this crazy high to the point where Chris and I, when we record, I live at his house for a week at a time and we track all day, work at night, analyze, keep going. So I tracked like the first four tracks or five tracks. And then all of a sudden, this new high voice came into the session. And Chris was like, we have to go back and retrack some of those other highs with this. And we did, and I'm glad we did because like on Dead Eyes Replete, all those crazy highs were not like that before we went back and did that. So we're never satisfied. And even as we were finished, like when you finish a record, we were like, is it good? It's so weird. And we finished vocals and everything right before Christmas, so it was like weird, immersive studio thing. And then with family cooking food, it was just a strange experience. And we shared it with a few people, and they were like, I think it's good. It's better than As Gomorrah.
I know
Don,
I felt that way listening to it, and it's such a weird thing to say because I think As Gomorrah Burns is such an incredible record because you almost feel like there's going to be a downswing after such a strong album. Not many bands come out with a better record.
Chris felt the pressure. He was pushing, pushing, pushing himself. A big thing about As Gomorrah too is that it was mainly Donaldson driving the bus. There was definitely collaborations for sure, but it was so pandemic, stretched out over so long. It was really Donaldson that was pushing us, whereas this one, it was far more collaborative, I guess, where we wrote it together mostly on tour. So we're together in the bandwagon, moving in the bandwagon, which I highly suggest no one tries because it's not fun. And then we just end up fighting. Days off on the Carnifex tour, we would get hotel rooms. Carnifex and all the other bands would be resting, and we would be in our hotel room writing riffs. So
Oh.
together, it's the most cohesively written Cryptopsy record of my era, I want to say, because the self-titled was mostly John with a little sprinkling of Chris. The tomes were quite cohesive, written intensely, but Chris was still trying to find his footing and confidence writing for Cryptopsy. Tome 2 was a little better. As Gamora, he was more confident, but it was so scattered over the pandemic. This one was like intensely written, very close together, period of time wise, to the point where Chris came home and started listening to the riffs and putting stuff together, and he was like, "Oh my God, that riff is the same riff as in the other song." And we didn't realize it because we were writing just so close together. All the ideas just mashed together. So we had to rewrite stuff like on the spot. The intro to uh, Until There's Nothing Left was completely different until about a week before drums were recorded. He totally rewrote that. It was far more Beneath the Massacre, and none of us were in love with it. And he rewrote this crazy thing, which is just all over the place, very Whisper Supremacy, Cryptopsy influence around Then You'll Beg. And it just changed the whole like dimension of the song. It was just amazing. Yeah, he's never satisfied. He's the ultimate hater, and he's doing good for us.
He's a self-hater. At
Big,
times.
big so. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
at
us
times.
too. Yeah.
When you have a guy like Flo on drums, I mean, his legacy, his impact as a drummer, everybody knows that he's helped define what a
Oh
drummer
yeah.
should be in a death metal band. I felt like on this record, you still get him as one of the cornerstones, one of the pillars of the sound of the album, but I didn't feel like it overshadow everything else, like I've seen in some previous records where it's so
Yeah,
pungent.
yeah, yeah. Once was not was just all drums, right? Everyone's always said that. Um, it's at the point where everyone knows what's good for the band is the song. So he stepped into the studio. This is something that was great for him. He was in prime shape because we went into the studio about a month after, maybe a month and a half, maybe a month after Carnifex ended the tour. So he was like in playing shape, and that was great. And when he comes in with like little beat ideas, there's like some like parameters of like, oh, this is going to be a blast, this is going to be a two pack, this is going to be a grind. But he doesn't come with like pre-established roles or anything. All of that happens in the studio. Happy accidents that he has to relearn afterwards, which is crazy, but it's just the way that he works. And they did like one song a day and he just crushed it, just crushed it. And when it came down to the mix, him and Chris went back and forth a little bit, but it was not anything too much where he knows he's 50 years old now. His ego is a little bit more in check, I think, than 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And that's a great thing for the band and for all of you guys. And now, changing gears a little bit, I put myself through watching the Belgium Jasper interview that you did. Painful, painful minutes of my life that I'll never get back, unfortunately. But anyways, I was just curious to see what kind of dumbass questions that douchebag would
I can't remember.
ask you.
It was after a show in Luxembourg. I remember that. He asked me about the Juno. He asked me about drinking beer.
Yeah, and that's the one I want to talk to you about because I thought you were less than truthful.
It was later in the tour. I will say that. It was later in the tour. I do, but honestly, I'm getting older and I am behaving myself more than I used to.
I don't know. I have serious doubts about that.
I'm behaving myself more than I used to. I am trying to take better care of myself. The podcast is on hiatus,
Yeah,
so
that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Like,
the obligation of having to promote certain products is no longer a part of my life, and that is something that my liver is happy about.
oh, I'm sure your liver is thanking you, but I've always wondered is what kind of impact drinking while on tour, regardless of the amounts of drinking while on tour, what kind of impacts have you ever felt that would have on your vocals?
Oh, nothing. Zero. Nothing. Honestly. I've never had an issue. There's a few times I felt it maybe once and it was just like a dehydration thing that I just didn't drink enough water while it was while we were in Portland. Yes, I had gone to Wayfinder Beer that day. It was a great day. But I remember being on stage and just being like dry, but it could have been the smoke machine. So I'm always very careful. This is like me saying, I don't need to do this. No one needs to do this, but I feel a little bit looser if I have a beer or two before I go on stage. It just lowers my inhibitions as a frontman. But I've done shows sober, obviously, too. Not that I'm intoxicated after one or two beers, but I'm a little loosened up.
Yeah, yeah, it just helps you get a little bit more in the groove, if you will.
Exactly. It just brings out the monster faster.
Now, you mentioned the podcast. I have to ask you about that because I saw your announcement. Is this just a casualty of how successful the band currently is with a tour schedule and everything that comes with it?
I think it might be. It's also, I'm doing a lot of these, and I don't want to spend more time on the other side, is another thing. Vox and Hops is amazing. I started it because I had plenty of time. I started it because Flo had Ultimass. He announced to me that David Vincent was going to be his vocalist. Ollie was in Cattle. Chris's studio is always running. I knew I was going to be jealous of my boys. I didn't want to have that emotion. I needed to find something for myself. I had a lot more time on my hand. Now my kids are older. We're busy with them. Family obligations outside of my household. The band is extremely busy and takes a lot of, like, I just finished one tour and I was literally setting up emails for new merch designs before this interview for the next tour with Nile, which is coming up in September. So it's just constantly happening. I'm very, very busy, and I've been feeling for about a year that I wanted to stop, and I pushed through. And there was moments of like, I had a great chat with Carl Sanders from Nile that sort of reinvigorated me last year. I started listening to podcasts again because I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, and then I started a podcast and I didn't listen to podcasts for 5 years. And then last summer, to help motivate me get back into it, I started listening to more like comedy based. Bad Friends is one of them, podcasts where they literally talk about nothing. And here I am having to do all this PR work and promote records and have to hit the mark. And it was annoying. And I don't want to do that anymore. So if it comes back, it will come back differently. Um, a part of me wants, if I ever do bring it back, I've been thinking about it. I want to do it differently. I want it to be more casual, and I want to do it in person, and I want to film it. But that's a big obligation that I have to
Similar,
build towards, like Garza.
Garza, I was just going to ask you,
Yeah.
similar to
But
that.
yeah.
And I think you would be perfect for it because I think you have a
Yeah.
great
So if any
personality.
like network out there, not Fest, anyone else, you want to hire me to do this, I'm your man.
All right, and I'm the man behind the man in this case because I think you would be great for it because I think you have a natural knack for it and you're a great talker. So we the world of metal in Canada is gonna miss Vox and Hops for sure because there's not many of us doing this stuff in
I
Canada,
know. No, I
specifically
know.
in
Yeah.
Canada.
It will come back. The band needs to settle down a bit because,
Hey,
touring three, 4 months a year is a lot.
this
And
is
then
a
like,
great problem to have.
the obligation of having to stack episodes and editing on tour is not fun. I just don't like it. I would edit and I'd find myself getting mad, and it's not an emotion I want to have.
No, no, no. You need to be relaxed and enjoy the tour and enjoy the experience. Matt, on that note, I've enjoyed the experience, and I always enjoy seeing you guys on tour. So I'm looking forward to you guys hitting Toronto at some point in time with this
I hope
album.
so. I hope so. It's coming, but not anytime soon. But sadly, the Nile tour is not popping up into Canada. We had hopes that it would, but at the end of the day, it is not.
Yeah, but I'm sure
So
there's another something cooking down the line. You
there is.
you guys are never that far off of playing a Toronto show, and you guys always play to great crowds in
Oh yeah,
Toronto.
Toronto's amazing. We always love the
Massive
experience
love for you
there.
guys here.
Yeah.
So
And shout
I'm
out
looking.
to Noel and um, Inertia and everything, just for keeping it going all these years and keep fighting the good fight.
All right, Matt. On that note, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate talking to you as always. Outstanding record.
Thank you. I appreciate it.